ready, Staten Island. It's time to celebrate 5 years of Ferry Hawks baseball. Come out to the ballpark this week as the Ferry Hawks welcome in the Charleston Dirty Birds May 5th through the 10th. Grab the kids and come on out. We kick it off on Tuesday, May 5th with Cinco de Baseball with $5 tickets and $5 food and beverage specials. And we end the week as we celebrate all moms on Mother's Day. Moms get in free. Visit ferryhawks.com now to lock in your seats.
Are your ad campaigns lighting up the dashboard, but not the pipeline? That's bullspend, and marketers are calling it out in Dashboard Confessions.
My boss asked for results, so I opened my dashboard for the only positive-sounding metric I had: impressions.
Cut the bull spend. See revenue, not just reach. LinkedIn delivers the highest return on ad spend of major ad networks. Advertise on LinkedIn. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a $250 credit. Go to linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
So a couple of days ago, I had my friend Samantha Edis in studio. As I said, I don't really deal much these days with the influencers anymore. I think it's starting to go the other way on us. I really do. I think that whining and yelling and screaming every day. You know, look, if there's a swastika on a shul, that's worthy of mention. When Mamdani does the things he's doing with the lack of buffer zones, that's worth mentioning. When 2 people are murdered in London because they're Jewish, that's worth mentioning. But every single day, you know, it's unfortunate, but we live in a society where a lot of people think that hating Jews is chic and it's cool, especially in sanctuary cities and sanctuary states. So I believe we got to be careful, okay? So some of these influencers that find something to talk about every day, they've annoyed me. I've moved on, okay? So I only talked to a select few. And Samantha's one of them because she was a Democrat who claims she's seen the light, like my friend Alan Dershowitz, who for 86 years was a Democrat and last week shared an award with me at a Republican club on the Upper East Side of New York City. I've convinced Michael Rappaport. She'll never admit it, but I convinced Lizzie Savetsky. There's a lot of people out there who have come to our side, and Sam said she did too. Yet, she still lives in Los Angeles, and when she talked about the mayor race and governor race, getting a lot of play across the country, she brought up a couple of Democrats. Next thing you know, I'm getting text messages and phone calls from my Republican lady friends who live in California who say, whoa, Sammy, slow down. One of them happens to be my next guest. I love this girl. She's great. Met her at the RJC in Wisconsin. The night, not later on that night, President Trump was nominated for president for our party. Again, that was RJC, Wisconsin. So this is Elizabeth Barcohana live from Los Angeles. Liz, good morning. How are you?
Hi, Sid. Good morning. So happy to be back with you.
Great to have you back.
About California.
From Cali, baby. And look, you know, the CNN carried these debates. The governor debate 2 nights ago, the mayor debate last night. So people here in New York are becoming familiar with some of the names that are involved in this. And for what it's worth, maybe because he was on Joe Rogan last week, this guy Spencer Pratt, let's start there. He's running for mayor in Los Angeles. He's getting a lot of play here in New York. People here seem to like him. You give me what you're looking at handicapping the mayor's race and why people were upset with Sam and others who brought up Democrats in both races.
So the LA mayor's race is very important because we have a very weak incumbent mayor, Karen Bass. And obviously what happened last year with the fires was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back, but we have other problems here as well, including, you know, the homelessness issue, home building, which, you know, the Palisades fire exposed a lot of the corruption and failures of the government. It wasn't just, you know, the fires is not just about these few thousand homes that burned down in the Palisades. It exposed what's going on citywide and why our city looks the way that it does. And so, you know, we had a long time of no serious challengers after the fires coming for Bath. And finally, at the very last minute, she drew 2 serious challengers. One was Spencer Pratt, who, as you mentioned, you know, has been very high profile in exposing not only her, but stuff at the state level as well. dealing with Gavin Newsom. And then from her left, she drew a challenger named Nithya Raman, who is a sitting city council member, and she is part of, the Democratic Socialists of America, similar to Zoran Mandami. So we are all very, intensely watching this race, and because Spencer has, he's not been elected to office before, and he was late to the game. He's at a disadvantage, but he is incredibly popular, and people are very excited about him. And despite being an inexperienced politician, I think actually that's to his benefit, because we all watched the debate last night, and Raman kind of looked like, she sounded like a robot, and Karen Bass her record is indefensible, and she kept saying that she's doing a good job. And then he comes on, he talks like a normal human being. He's a dad with young kids. They burned down his life, and he's coming to save the city, and he's bringing so much hope. And what's been going on is, on the left, people are nervous about him because they're afraid that they're going to lose power in control of all the money and everything that goes on here in LA. We have a huge population, and we control a lot of what goes on in the whole state of California here. So if a Republican, Spencer's a Republican, if he comes in, then the game over for a lot of the fraud that's going on here, and they know it. And so there's been like these subtle operations, basically, to get people to believe that Spencer cannot win, which is not true, and that Bass may not make it through the primary, which is also highly unlikely because she is an incumbent candidate. She has a lot of money raised. She's supported by the Democrat Party and all the political establishment. She's endorsed by Nancy Pelosi and Adam Schiff. She's endorsed by all the major labor unions in Los Angeles. And so even if the DSA is not supporting her, there are other games in town that are going to get her past the line. And because it's a nonpartisan race, if she wins in this June 2nd election, then she wins outright. If she gets a majority on June 2nd, she wins outright. We don't go to a runoff in November like you guys did in New York. So there's a lot of mixed messaging going on here. And what we were upset about is people telling voters that in order to get Spencer elected in November, you should vote for Bass now. That is not a correct message to give to voters. It's also very demoralizing. And so, thankfully, when Samantha came back on your show, and also she corrected herself on Monday, she, came out and said, I'm voting for Pratt, vote for Pratt. And that was the right thing to do.
No, and look, he's got a lot of momentum. You talked about the debate 2 nights ago, and you guys watched it. And for what it's worth, there was a poll that came out this morning, and he was winning. He was ahead of Karen Bass. And you're right, you cannot minimize what she means to Los Angeles, even though she's a complete nightmare and a disaster for any rational person. She is the incumbent. Like you said, she's got a lot of money and unions and folks behind her. So to think that she's not going to be there in the end is somewhere between silly and stupid. It's going to be Pratt versus Bass. I know the other lady, the DSA person who's being compared to Mamdani, is getting some support, but I expect it to be Pratt versus Bass. And in the end, how do you make sure that Pratt gets the win?
Well, she's weak. And like I said, there's a lot of excitement around him that we haven't seen in Los Angeles. I mean, I've been doing elections now since 2020, and I haven't seen this kind of enthusiasm to vote early on our side of the aisle, ever. So people are very, very excited to vote. We've already got our ballots. They came earlier this week, and then we're going to get the early vote numbers. And if there is a high enthusiasm, then he can win for sure. So what I'm telling people is, to get your ballots in as soon as it comes in the mail. Do not wait this election to vote in person, because by then it's too late. We need to build the momentum early.
I like that. Elizabeth Barcohana joining us live right now from Los Angeles. They got two major races going on, which can shape the country. It's been a brutal, brutal long stay for California with Karen Bass as mayor and this moron Gavin Newsom as the governor, and both of those races are going on at the same time. In fact, the last two of the last 3 nights, I had debates on both of those. We just talked about Spencer Pratt being our choice for mayor. I'm not sure. Did President Trump get involved in that discussion?
In mayor, no. And honestly, it's not helpful if he did, because we are framing this election as just common sense. This is not politics. This is, Spencer's platform is no more doing meth and fentanyl and having sex on the sidewalk in the street and terrorizing mothers and children, and no more, stealing taxpayer money. None of that is partisan, and we don't want to, and it's not federal either. What they are trying to do, especially with immigration, is make everything about Trump. And people are fed up with hearing that. And it's the same thing going on in the governor's race. They want to get elected because they want to tell the voters that I'm the only thing that's standing between you and President Trump coming and, rounding everybody up in the darkness. And that's not what is on normal people's mind. What's on normal people's mind is the crime, the homelessness, the high prices. We have the highest gas, highest taxes, highest home prices. I could go down the line, no, we don't want to federalize the election. We want to keep it as local as possible. And Spencer has been amazing at messaging that, and we don't want to interfere with that.
Well, the problem is, and no one loves Trump more than me. I adore him. I love him.
Actually, I might, Sid. I might.
I don't know. He called me up on stage, Hanukkah. That's a big deal there, Lizzie. I don't know. But no, I know you love him too. But in all honesty, Mamdani ran against Trump, not Cuomo or Curtis, and he won, and won relatively easily. In New Jersey, Mikey Muhammad Sherrill, she ran against Trump, not Jack Ciattarelli. She killed him. So when you say it may not be helpful, and again, we both love Trump, in these sanctuary cities, sanctuary states, blue, it hasn't been proven that Trump's endorsement helps. So on the governor's side, I want Steve Hilton. Why? I don't live there. I know nothing about the guy. But because Trump likes him. But when I've given you examples in New York, in New Jersey, other blue sanctuary cities and states where the Trump folks, like Bruce Blakeman right now, is getting a ton of support from Trump. He was in the Oval Office just 2 days ago. Is that going to help him or hurt him against Kathy Hochul? We're going to find out. And it seems like in L.A. or in the state race with Steve Hilton, it may not help. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, in the governor's race in California, we have two very strong Republican candidates. One is Steve Hilton, as you mentioned, and the other is Sheriff Chad Bianco. And when President Trump endorsed Sheriff Bianco, it was the day after the two of them kind of had a panel discussion with Rick Grinnell. And the issue in California is that, we have an open primary, which means that the top two vote getters will, so it's different than the nonpartisan race and the mayor's race, what we were just talking about. In the partisan races, like for governor, it is a primary, and it's the top two vote getters will advance. And the fear was, and it still is on my mind, that the Republicans will be so split that we may not get either guy into the primary. And so I think what President Trump was trying to do is put his thumb on the scale with Republican voters, because it also came a few days before the California State Republican Party convention, where we were voting on whether to endorse one of the candidates. And so it ended up where neither candidate received the threshold necessary for an endorsement from the party. So now President Trump's endorsement stands kind of, on its own. And that's who I also agree with President Trump, by the way. I've also endorsed Steve Hilton. I think that he is the stronger candidate. He's been polling at the top consistently this whole time, not only ahead of Bianco, but ahead of the field of Democrats. He is the top of the polls. And so I think it's very important it sounds like President Trump agrees that, we all unite behind him going into the primary to make sure that Californians have not only a Republican option to vote for, but an alternative to the status quo. Any one of the Democrats who are running, the top two contenders are Javier Becerra, who is status quo, which is, again, highest taxes, highest unemployment, highest poverty rates, highest gas prices, highest utility costs, highest home prices, most homelessness, worse schools, crime rampant all over the place. When you call 911, nobody answers the phone. That's what's going on in California. And Javier Becerra is status quo. And then on the other hand, you have Tom Steyer, who is a communist. So it's either status quo, which is very bad, or worse, between the two Democrats. And so in order to have an option on the ballot for change in California, we need to have Steve Hilton on the ballot. And so for anyone, especially a Trump supporter, to go against President Trump's endorsement or to support a Democrat for governor in California is unforgivable, in my opinion.
Love it. God, I agree with you 100%. I love your enthusiasm and your passion for our party, Elizabeth Barcohana. It's great. Final 60 seconds, and you've done a tremendous job here. You clearly know exactly what you're talking about. Give me the odds, then, that Los Angeles ends up with a Republican mayor, that the state of California goes back to a Republican governor. Do you feel pretty good about one, feel pretty good about both, or do you feel like, hey, we got a shot, but the truth is, like New Yorkers, we know how Californians vote? How do you really feel about these two races?
I think that we definitely have a shot in both cases. And what it's going to come down to is turnout. And the way to drive turnout is by voting early in California. We have to learn from the Democrats. And what they do is they blow us out of the water in early voting to the point where we cannot mathematically catch up to them in the 10 days of in-person voting that we have or the one day of election day. And I have been advocating for this for a long time. And this is finally the first election where I'm not getting so much pushback as I normally do. Today is day 4 of voting, and my phone does not stop ringing from people asking me about voting because I have a voter guide. That's my, you started talking about influencers. My coming to be as an influencer was because I do these very respected and widely used voter guides. My voter guide now has probably been viewed probably 500,000 times, and we're on day 4. So I've never seen this kind of enthusiasm, and we are going to get the numbers in the next week or so of, what the early vote turnout is. And if that looks good, then we really do have a chance. But if it's more of the same kind of voter apathy, demoralization, feeling like what's the point of voting, or, the thing that Republicans do where we're like, we only vote in person on election day because that's the right thing to do and that's the safest thing to do, and fraud, and blah, blah, blah. We're never going to get ourselves out of this. We have to adapt to what our opposition does. Otherwise, we will never beat them.
Well said and true. Like they always say, Elizabeth, if you can't beat them, join them. Let's join them. Let's beat them at their own game. You're great. You really are. What a tremendous conversation. I feel like I'm up to date now. I mean, I can't vote, obviously, but I know what's going on. So thank you for this great conversation, and hopefully we'll continue to talk right through these two major races. There's a lot of folks that listen to me, believe it or not. They get up at 3 o'clock in the morning to listen in California, and we've got New Yorkers who go back and forth. So thank you for this, Elizabeth. You were terrific. Thank you.
Absolutely, Sid.
God bless you. Elizabeth Barcohana right there. You see her on Fox News all the time. She's actually beautiful, too. She's smart. She's beautiful. She's great. We'll take a short break. We've got more of the Friday edition of Sid and Friends in the Morning right after these words.
Thanks for listening to Sid and Friends in the Morning. You can hear Sid and Friends in the Morning weekday mornings at 6. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms.
Plus, follow WABC on social, on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode, so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?
Listen to this podcast now
On the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Leadership Thread with Dr. Peggy Polonis.
I'm Dr. Peggy Polonis. Join me on each episode where I unravel the story that shaped leaders, tracing the thread that led them where they are today. Because leadership isn't born in adulthood. And thank you once again for joining us on the Leadership Thread, education, ethics, and sustainability.
Download all of Red Apple Media's podcasts right now through your favorite podcast platform.